Tom kicks off an insane solo adventure, paddling his tiny canoe deep into the vast Amazon jungle. The rainy season shows no mercy, immediately soaking our brave explorer and his little green boat. With dangerous wildlife everywhere, Tom is dropped into a completely unknown spot to test his extreme limits. Leaving civilization far behind, he had to take 3 long flights just to reach this remote hellscape. After a crazy long boat ride, he finally packs up his gear to start the brutal 5-day challenge. Tom explains that local guides are simply dropping him off to face this wild adventure completely alone. Cruising down the calm river, our guide takes a moment to soak in the stunning Brazilian scenery. But the peaceful ride ends fast as he carefully maneuvers his boat through a super dense flooded forest. The local guide hacks through the branches, leading Tom deeper into the untamed, murky wilderness. He compares this crazy vibe to his past island survival trips, though this jungle feels much more intense. The guides casually drop a terrifying fun fact. This place is absolutely crawling with nocturnal caimans. Tom spots his very first snake swimming by, and thankfully, the guide confirms it isn't a deadly one. The guides finally leave, leaving our brave adventurer completely alone in this hot, sticky, flooded nightmare. He checks his thermometer and instantly regrets everything as it reads an absolutely brutal 36 degrees. Despite the suffocating heat, he admits this epic Amazon survival trip has been a lifelong dream. Surrounded by endless green canopy, he knows he urgently needs to find a solid spot to build his home. Tom shouts a final, somewhat nervous goodbye to the guys as they paddle away into the distance. Sitting on a damp log, he nervously listens to the spooky sounds of howler monkeys echoing nearby. He opens up his heavy case to reveal that most of his luggage is just fancy camera equipment. His phone is already a useless brick, but at least he brought plenty of backup memory cards. For actual survival gear, Tom relies entirely on a sturdy knife, a shiny machete, and a trusty fire starter. He hilariously shows off his anti-friction cream and bug spray, knowing he will definitely need both out here. With his water purification tablets ready, our guy watches the last sign of human help completely disappear. Armed with his massive machete, Tom boldly steps into the thick jungle to hunt for a campsite. The Amazon canopy is so incredibly thick that finding a clear spot feels almost completely impossible. After wandering around, he finally spots a decent clearing with fewer dead trees to crash on his head. Wasting absolutely no time, Tom starts aggressively chopping down small trees to build his new jungle mansion. He quickly gathers the freshly cut branches, planning to use Y-shaped sticks for his main shelter frame. Dragging heavy wood through this tangled mess of vines is quickly turning into an exhausting workout. Parched and sweaty, he scoops up some murky swamp water and hopes his fancy filter bottle actually works. He tosses in a purification tablet, gives it a good shake, and nervously waits for his jungle juice. Hydrated and energized, Tom gets right back to violently hacking at the innocent Amazonian flora. He narrowly avoids slicing his own leg off, a very quick reminder that hospitals are miles away. Our amateur builder carefully starts piecing together his wobbly wooden frame, hoping it won't instantly collapse. Using the blunt side of his machete like a hammer, he desperately secures the main support posts. He measures and trims a long pole, slowly bringing his sad little jungle cabana to life. Tom realizes he needs a roof, so he starts gathering long straight sticks to lay across the top. Since he brilliantly forgot to bring actual rope, he starts pulling down tough vines to tie things together. With his natural jungle rope, he carefully begins laying the roof structure onto the wobbly main frame. It takes a lot of grunt work, but the skeleton of his new 5-star resort is looking somewhat decent. Now, for the actual roof, Tom brutally attacks a poor palm plant to steal its massive green leaves. He complains that these specific leaves aren't great, but beggars absolutely cannot be choosers in the wild Amazon. Knowing the jungle will instantly grow back, he feels a tiny bit less guilty about his extreme landscaping. The brutal humidity is kicking his butt, forcing him to chug his warm, purified swamp water constantly. Refreshed, he gets back to painstakingly tying every single wobbly stick together with his makeshift vine ropes. He gathers up the massive leaves, ready to carefully layer them onto his surprisingly sturdy roof frame. Sweating buckets, he confesses that this humid tropical weather is completely destroying his cold climate-loving Dutch soul. Tom explains he usually makes survival videos in the freezing snow, so this hot jungle is a massive shock. He admits he is far from an expert here, just a crazy guy seeking a brand new, extremely sweaty challenge. He proudly shows off his leafy roof, fully admitting that a slight drizzle would completely soak him right now. He keeps desperately piling on more leaves, praying to the jungle gods that it won't actually rain tonight. With the roof somewhat done, Tom aggressively starts hammering thick logs into the dirt to build his bed frame. Darkness is falling fast, and our exhausted hero realizes he urgently needs a place to lay his weary head. Using his last ounce of energy, he aggressively whacks at a thick log to make the bed supports. He struggles to balance a long pole, rushing against the fading light to finish his incredibly uncomfortable wooden bed. He finally lays the sticks across the frame, creating a bed that looks like a literal medieval torture device. The bed is technically finished, but Tom is completely out of gas and absolutely dreading the uncomfortable night ahead. Before collapsing, he scrambles to gather some crispy dry twigs and bark, desperately needing to start a protective fire. He's incredibly relieved to find some actual dry tinder, a rare miracle in this insanely humid swamp. Sitting in the dark, he carefully carves tiny curls into a stick to help catch the first precious spark. He admits he rarely uses feather sticks, but tonight he needs every single advantage to get this fire going. He finds a massive, fuzzy piece of dry vine, hoping this magical jungle tinder will save his cold night. With his fire steel ready, Tom prepares for the ultimate test, making fire in the soggy Amazonian darkness. Sparks fly as he strikes his steel, desperately trying to ignite the little pile of jungle fluff he gathered. A tiny flame finally appears, and he gently blows on it like his entire life depends on it. The flame quickly dies, leaving him frustrated and forcing him to hunt blindly for even better, drier kindling. He regroups, strikes the steel again, and finally manages to get a solid, beautiful little fire blazing brightly. He quickly feeds the hungry little flames with dry leaves, carefully nurturing his only source of warmth and safety. A massive wave of relief washes over him as the campfire successfully illuminates his sad little jungle home. He finally lays down on his horrible stick bed, instantly confirming that it is the most uncomfortable thing ever. Just to keep things spicy, a completely massive, terrifying tarantula casually strolls right past his campsite in the dark. Paranoia fully sets in as Tom wildly scans the dark jungle with his headlamp, looking for more creepy crawlies. The temperature slightly drops, but the humidity remains an absolutely suffocating blanket over the dark, noisy forest. He nervously checks his surroundings, fully aware that all the dangerous predators are wide awake and probably watching him. Armed with a stick and his headlamp, our brave guy takes a terrifying little midnight stroll to find firewood. He blindly hacks at a dead branch, hoping he isn't simultaneously chopping into a snake's hidden living room. He safely drags the hard-earned firewood back to camp, ready to fortify his glowing protective barrier for the night. He crashes back onto his spine-destroying stick bed, totally exhausted but terrified to actually close his eyes and sleep. He complains that he will have to wake up constantly just to feed the fire and keep the jaguars away. With jaguars prowling and snakes slithering nearby, Tom realizes this Amazonian night is going to be incredibly long. He lies down, instantly deciding his lumpy stick bed needs a serious upgrade before tomorrow. Tom tries to sleep, but every rustling leaf makes him think a hungry predator is outside. Checking his thermometer, he groans about the insane jungle humidity, making sleeping almost entirely impossible. Surviving the night with barely any rest, he wakes up grumpy, sweaty, and completely exhausted. With itchy bug bites everywhere, our guy reluctantly forces himself up to face day two. He slips on his trusty Crocs, ready to finally fix his terrible roof and clear camp. Realizing his roof resembles Swiss cheese, Tom officially makes shelter improvement his top morning priority. Wandering into the dense green thicket, he starts hunting for massive leaves to waterproof his roof. He eagerly hacks at a giant plant, hoping these tropical umbrellas will finally keep rain out. Wrestling with the massive fronds, Tom quickly learns harvesting jungle materials is a sweaty, exhausting workout. He triumphantly gathers a leafy haul, feeling like a true jungle architect ready to renovate. Back at camp, he begins eagerly layering the huge leaves to patch the gaping roof holes. He proudly inspects his handiwork from below, noting that his new roof is actually looking solid. Realizing he needs way more coverage, Tom dives back into the brush to harvest another batch. He hauls another massive stack of green roofing material, sweating profusely in the stifling tropical heat. With the roof nearly sealed, he excitedly notes his little survival camp is finally coming together. Reaching high into the canopy, he chops down one last giant frond to complete his mission. He precisely slices the massive leaf stems, preparing the final pieces for his completely upgraded roof. Carrying the remaining materials, our sweaty survivalist struts back to camp, eager to finish the job. He carefully layers the final leaves on top, proudly admiring his completely leak-proof jungle masterpiece. Exhausted from the humid labor, Tom chugs some much-needed filtered water to survive the sweltering heat. Complaining about the gross stickiness, he drags his tired body back to work, refusing to quit. He gives a cheerful thumbs up, begging viewers to like and subscribe to support his sweaty suffering. Switching focus to his terrible bed, he violently hacks apart a fresh sapling for a frame. He wades deep into the dense brush, hunting for straighter, less knobby sticks for a mattress. He drags long, straight palm stems back to camp, determined to finally get a good sleep. He meticulously slices off the sharp edges, ensuring his new bed will not randomly stab him. Working with intense focus, Tom gathers more smooth green stalks to create a perfectly flat surface. He throws away the old bumpy sticks, making room for his drastically improved comfortable jungle mattress. He trims down this excess length, making sure his brand new bed fits perfectly inside the shelter. He proudly lines up the final, perfectly smooth palm stalks, totally ready for an epic nap. Tom delightfully tests his new creation, happily reporting it feels 100 times better than yesterday. He takes another huge swig of filtered swamp water, deeply satisfied with his intense camp renovations. Taking off his sweaty, stinky boots, he prepares to finally enjoy a well-deserved, incredibly comfortable nap. The drone reveals the incredibly dense, endless green Amazon canopy surrounding his tiny, isolated little camp. After resting, Tom heads back to the flooded swamp edge, effortlessly pumping more essential drinking water. Refreshed and hydrated, he enthusiastically grabs his camera gear, ready to finally explore the wild jungle. He excitedly hikes down a narrow, overgrown animal trail, hoping to spot some dangerous local wildlife. Finding a massive palm tree, Tom carefully examines the thick jungle, eager for an exciting encounter. Wandering deeper into the humid thicket, he keeps his eyes peeled for monkeys, birds, or jaguars. Back at camp, he decides to tie down his shelter frame, tightly securing the structure carefully. He meticulously weaves the sturdy vines together, making absolutely sure the wind won't blow his roof away. Our guy proudly inspects the leafy ceiling, feeling confident about surviving any upcoming heavy tropical rainstorm. The drone captures the vast, untouched beauty of the Amazon basin, highlighting his true jungle isolation. Tom aggressively hacks down a massive dead tree trunk, determined to gather enough firewood for tonight. He easily chops through the thick jungle brush, gathering even more materials to improve his home. He neatly folds another massive palm leaf, using it to build a sturdy, waterproof side wall. Kneeling in the dirt, our sweaty guy expertly positions the giant leaf, slowly enclosing his bedroom. He perfectly secures the green wall, excitedly noting that his shelter is finally feeling like home. Deciding he still needs more wood, Tom wanders right back into the dense brush for hunting. He proudly hacks down another thick, rotted log, ready to keep his protective fire blazing completely. He violently chops a long branch into smaller pieces, efficiently building up his essential nighttime fuel. Dragging the heavy wood back to the fire pit, he feels much more prepared for tonight. Tom confidently looks at the camera, claiming his incredibly lazy firewood strategy is actually brilliant efficiency. He carefully slides another giant leaf into place, completely closing off the back of his bed. Admiring his fully enclosed little hut, he cheerfully declares that his shelter is officially completely stormproof. Our guy carefully inspects the dense ground brush, still terrified of stepping on a hidden snake. Feeling surprisingly productive, he easily chops down a long, straight sapling to create a makeshift fishing rod. Sitting comfortably in the dirt, he carefully ties a fishing line and hook to his pole. Fully equipped, he confidently hops into a tiny green canoe, ready to paddle into the flooded forest. Paddling slowly through the creepy trees, he immediately starts hunting for fat, juicy spiders for bait. He complains that finding good insect bait in this dense flooded jungle is actually quite difficult. He expertly spots a large spider clinging to a flooded tree trunk, plotting a capture strategy. Tom reaches out with his paddle, trying to violently smack the huge spider into the water. He triumphantly paddles through the flooded trees, having successfully acquired his terrifying eight-legged fishing bait. He bravely hooks the giant, horrifying spider, praying this disgusting bait will catch a decent dinner. He wildly slaps his fishing rod on the water's surface, aggressively mimicking feeding fish to attract piranhas. Suddenly, a small silver fish violently attacks the line, and Tom excitedly reels in his meal. Paddling happily through the dense forest, our successful fisherman excitedly navigates his little canoe straight home. He gives the camera an enthusiastic thumbs up, totally thrilled with his surprisingly successful Amazonian fishing trip. Tom successfully paddles back towards camp, eager to cook his well-earned fresh little fish dinner soon. Back at camp, the fire is happily roaring again, ready to perfectly cook his jungle prize. He casually walks back into the brush, easily finding a perfect little stick for a skewer. Kneeling by the fire, he sharply carves the stick, expertly preparing his rustic little rotisserie setup. He proudly skewers the tiny piranha, propping it right next to the hot coals for a roast. Watching his dinner sizzle, Tom happily declares that this tiny fish is his greatest daily achievement. Sitting on his bed, he ravenously devours the small, bony fish, barely leaving any meat behind. He delightfully licks his fingers, confirming that his freshly roasted piranha actually tastes incredibly delicious today. While resting, he inspects his damp feet, desperately trying to dry his incredibly wrinkled, swamp-soaked toes. With dry feet and a full stomach, Tom realizes he finally earned a good night's sleep. Lying on his bamboo bed, Tom hilariously admits that what he misses most is definitely his comfortable mattress. He suddenly realizes how much he genuinely craves the cool temperature of his home over this humid jungle. Unable to sleep in the sweltering heat, the restless guy grabs his machete to furiously chop some more firewood. Tom expertly tosses the freshly cut branches into the glowing campfire, desperately hoping to keep the annoying bugs away. He sits under his leafy shelter, nervously noting how incredibly pitch black the jungle instantly becomes without his trusty headlamp. Watching the dancing flames, he briefly gazes up at the ominous darkened trees looming silently against the night sky. Sensing the rapidly shifting weather, our cautious survivor quickly ensures his camp is fully prepared for a heavy downpour. He cleverly secures his protective case over the precious dry kindling to keep it safe from the incoming storm. Reflecting on his wild adventure, Tom laughingly remembers how naive he was about packing for this incredibly humid climate. Exhausted and sweaty, he carefully takes off his heavy boots, eagerly dreaming of wearing fresh, dry clothes tomorrow morning. Blinding flashes of lightning violently rip through the pitch-black jungle, signaling that a massive tropical storm is approaching fast. The heavy monsoon rain finally crashes down, aggressively testing the true strength of Tom's incredibly flimsy banana leaf roof. Despite the torrential downpour outside, the stubborn little campfire bravely continues to sizzle and burn fiercely through the night. Tom suddenly panics when he spots a terrifying venomous scorpion casually strolling right through his cozy jungle bedroom. After safely relocating the creepy intruder, he desperately blows onto the dying embers to revive his precious smoke-filled fire. Tom thankfully survives the wild night, waking up exhausted but incredibly relieved to see the daylight of day 3. Stretching his remarkably stiff back, he slowly sits up and reluctantly shoves his damp feet into his heavy boots. He proudly inspects his sturdy shelter, surprisingly thrilled that the roof barely leaked despite the relentless overnight rainforest deluge. With a huge sigh of relief, he finally puts on a fresh, long-sleeve shirt after 48 grimy, sweaty hours. Just as he gets comfortably dressed, the unpredictable Amazon sky hilariously opens up again, dropping another light morning drizzle. Frustrated by the suffocating humidity, Tom immediately strips off his dry shirt while staring at the endless green canopy. He hilariously realizes worrying about venomous snakes is completely useless when you are melting from the insane tropical heat. Taking a much-needed hydration break, he casually drinks his filtered swamp water while intensely planning his next jungle move. Before leaving camp, he strategically lets the fire smolder to conserve his rapidly dwindling supply of precious dry wood. Hearing mysterious splashes nearby, our curious explorer enthusiastically points toward the flooded trees, hoping to catch a massive fish. He carefully steps into his green canoe, proudly holding up a plastic cup he scavenged from the muddy swamp. Preparing to fish, he quickly readies his gear while balancing precariously inside the surprisingly unstable little green boat. Using the leftover piranha tail from his previous dinner, Tom resourcefully baits his rudimentary hook for a bigger catch. He silently paddles his sturdy green canoe deeper into the flooded forest, desperately searching for the perfect fishing spot. Realizing the swamp is way too shallow, the disappointed fisherman suddenly decides to completely change his daily survival strategy. Abandoning his boat, Tom bravely ventures deep into the dense jungle on a dangerous mission to forage for fruit. Tracking through the thick underbrush, he excitedly discovers a fresh burrow, enthusiastically hoping it belongs to a tasty armadillo. He suddenly spots a massive termite nest clinging to a tree and violently whacks it with his sharp machete. Examining the swarming insects, Tom cleverly realizes these aggressive bugs completely dominate this specific section of the dense forest. In a bizarre survival move, he crushes live termites and rubs their pungent bodies all over his bare hands. He hilariously sniffs his messy fingers, noting that this foul-smelling termite paste actually works as a brilliant insect repellent. Now fully protected from mosquitoes, the stinky survivalist confidently continues his difficult trek through the wildly overgrown jungle path. Despite hiking for hours, Tom sadly complains that he hasn't spotted any monkeys, sloths, or even a single snake. His luck suddenly changes when he discovers two massive bullet ants viciously fighting on a leaf beneath his boots. Avoiding the venomous bullet ants, he happily snatches a massive earthworm from the dirt, securing his ultimate fishing bait. Tom's persistence finally pays off when he excitedly spots a troop of squirrel monkeys swinging through the high canopy. Determined to secure a meal, the incredibly hungry guy bravely attempts to climb a thin palm tree for fruit. Using a makeshift wooden pole, he skillfully yanks down a huge cluster of beautifully ripe dark purple palm berries. After an exhausting 3-hour jungle hike, a sweaty Tom finally returns to camp, proudly carrying his fresh berry harvest. He quickly realizes he desperately needs to find some hollow bamboo to brilliantly craft a makeshift fireproof cooking pot. Overwhelmed by the oppressive humidity, the drained survivor simply decides to sit back and lazily chill out for a while. His desperately needed peaceful break is hilariously ruined by a flock of loud birds aggressively screaming at each other. Suddenly, the violent jungle winds furiously pick up again, instantly bringing another massive soaking wave of torrential tropical rain. Trapped under his flimsy canopy, Tom annoyingly notices a steady leak dripping directly onto his surprisingly comfortable bamboo bed. Refusing to sleep in a flooded bed, he marches into the pouring rain to quickly harvest massive green palm leaves. Like a determined pack mule, Tom heavily carries the massive green leaves through the ridiculously slippery, muddy forest terrain. The freezing rain absolutely batters him as he forcefully drags the heavy foliage back to his deteriorating jungle shelter. Working fast, he expertly layers fresh palm fronds over his leaking roof, desperately trying to completely seal the gap. He proudly sits under his reinforced roof, extremely grateful his gear case remained completely dry during the terrible storm. With the torrential rain finally stopping, the motivated survivor eagerly heads to his green canoe to quickly resume fishing. He cleverly mounts his waterproof camera to his wobbly boat, hoping to easily capture an epic Amazonian fish strike. Tom is hilariously annoyed to discover some sneaky creature completely stole his precious bait from the parked green canoe. Stepping into the murky swamp, he nervously reminds himself massive caimans are definitely hiding right beneath his fragile boat. He slowly paddles his canoe deeper into the flooded jungle, carefully scanning the dark water for any active fish. Finding a deeply shaded spot, the hopeful guy patiently drops his baited line directly into the eerie pitch black water. While waiting for a bite, he calmly reflects on how rare it is to spot a wild venomous snake. Getting incredibly bored with zero bites, the impatient fisherman quickly decides to excitedly paddle toward a completely different location. The wobbly green canoe slowly glides through the strangely quiet flooded forest, eagerly searching for some extremely aggressive piranhas. He intensely stares at his completely motionless fishing line, desperately hoping his giant earthworm bait will finally attract dinner. After hours of frustrating failure, a completely defeated Tom aggressively pulls his empty canoe back onto the muddy shore. Returning to his dry camp, his intensely growling stomach loudly reminds him he absolutely needs to find a meal. He angrily grabs his heavy machete and violently hacks a massively thick vine, desperately trying to gather necessary supplies. Suddenly spotting a beautifully massive, incredibly straight sapling, Tom eagerly decides it's perfect for crafting a new survival tool. With several powerful, remarkably precise swings of his heavy blade, he impressively fells the thick tree into the mud. He carefully inspects the freshly cut timber, cleverly planning how to transform this raw wood into something incredibly useful. Exhausted by the intensely brutal physical labor, Tom immediately strips off his wet shirt to aggressively cool his body. Looking across the flooded swamp, he enthusiastically spots a mysterious island and bravely decides to explore it for fruit. After a fruitless island search, the incredibly hungry explorer sadly realizes he must rely on his terrible fishing skills. Just as he casts his line, the unpredictable Amazon sky maliciously opens up, violently dumping another massive freezing shower. Completely drenched and hilariously miserable, Tom awkwardly films himself with his phone while shivering in the freezing tropical rain. Admitting humiliating defeat, the soaked fisherman angrily paddles his green canoe directly back toward the safety of his camp. Despite his completely starving situation, the breathtakingly beautiful Amazon rainforest peacefully continues to thrive all around his miserable boat. Back on solid ground, a starving Tom furiously attacks a palm tree, hoping to extract its highly nutritious heart. He powerfully chops the thick fibrous trunk into manageable sections, expertly trying to reveal the fresh white core inside. Finally, he proudly holds up a piece of palm heart, incredibly thrilled to have something solid to chew on. Still clutching his hard-won prize, Tom explains he's leaving the bark on to prevent spoiling. However, our buddy is hilariously complaining about being endlessly bombarded by 10 consecutive Amazon rain showers. Back at camp, the poor survivor is furiously tending a smoldering fire that just won't grow. The terrifying rain suddenly gets wilder, making the whole dark jungle incredibly misty and super spooky. Suddenly, Tom is completely freaking out as a massive thunderstrike literally shakes the ground near him. Peeking out from his shelter, the poor dude just watches the crazy soak the jungle. Still stubbornly positive, Tom hilariously brags about keeping his smoky fire going despite the massive downpour. Looking absolutely exhausted, our survivor admits he's struggling, but happily claims he won the first half. Despite his empty stomach, Tom confidently promises to catch a massive fish for his dinner tomorrow. He points into the dark distance, wildly hoping for much better luck when the rain stops. The terrifying rain miraculously transforms the entire forest floor into a massive, heavily flooded Amazon swamp. Thirsty Tom resourcefully catches fresh, dripping rainwater straight into his handy little water filter bottle perfectly. Getting ready for bed, the extremely tired guy hilariously grabs a huge chunk of wood for a pillow. Tom settles down on his terribly hard bamboo bed, totally complaining about his ridiculous wooden pillow. Nature suddenly calls, forcing a completely shirtless Tom to bravely pee in the spooky dark woods. Back at his cozy fire, our starving buddy starts happily snacking on the saved palm heart. Tom happily munches away, delightfully comparing the weird texture to a strange dry coconut sponge. He happily calculates the calories, incredibly grateful for anything better than another tiny bony piranha meal. Exhausted and totally defeated, Tom sits miserably by the fire, listening to the roaring thunder. Giving up for the night, the poor dude fully collapses onto his incredibly uncomfortable bamboo bed. A creepy giant spider suddenly appears, casually hanging out right next to his glowing Amazon campfire. Welcome to day 4, where poor Tom wakes up super grumpy to the sound of more rain. Feeling incredibly lazy, he hilariously decides to completely abandon his drone plans and just stay in bed. Finally getting up, Tom grabs his green canoe to start another completely soaked, very wet morning adventure. He expertly pushes his boat, totally ready to paddle deep into the crazy watery Amazon maze. With a super determined look, Tom expertly paddles his canoe through the breathtakingly beautiful flooded trees. Our hungry fisherman prepares his line, expertly deciding a fresh worm is definitely the perfect bait today. He carefully drops the hook, wildly hoping to finally catch a massive, incredibly tasty jungle monster. Those incredibly sneaky Amazon fish instantly steal his precious worm without him even noticing at all. Annoyed by the quick theft, Tom stubbornly rebaits his tiny hook, totally ready for round two. Still completely empty-handed, our determined buddy expertly casts his line into the stunning, misty Amazon River. Tom hilariously admits he has absolutely no real plan, mostly just hoping to magically find a fish. Suddenly, the calm water explodes as some giant mystery creature aggressively attacks his tiny fishing stick. He furiously tries to bait the hook again, totally desperate to catch that super sneaky fish. The resilient guy keeps aggressively paddling his small green canoe deeper into the very quiet jungle. The beautiful drone brilliantly captures the incredibly massive, completely endless green Amazon River stretching for miles. Cruising along, a super happy Tom finally finds a little yellow bakuri fruit casually floating right there. He happily cracks open the sweet fruit, incredibly thrilled to finally taste something deliciously soft today. After happily eating a few, our full survivor finally decides it's totally time to paddle back home. Back at his camp, Tom furiously works to expertly rebuild his sad little extinguished fire again. He furiously strikes his trusty lighter, completely determined to get a warm, comforting flame going soon. Suddenly, the jungle gets super creepy as an incredibly massive turkey vulture ominously arrives nearby. Our frustrated guy desperately tries to dry his soaking wet shoes by the tiny, struggling campfire. Realizing he needs more wood, Tom violently attacks a dead tree with his incredibly massive machete. He furiously stomps on the thick branches, easily breaking them down to build a much bigger campfire. Spotting a huge termite nest, Tom eagerly decides it's the absolutely perfect natural mosquito repellent ever. He proudly slices a massive chunk off, totally ready to smoke out those annoying tiny Amazon bugs. Disgusted by his nasty water filter, Tom hilariously complains about the incredibly terrible Amazon water taste. Still super hungry, he eagerly grabs another weird yellow fruit, totally hoping for a delicious sweet treat. Tom's face instantly scrunches up in pure agony, completely shocked by the incredibly intense sour taste. Despite the terrible sourness, our brave guy keeps munching, just super happy to finally eat something real. A stunning drone shot beautifully reveals the breathtaking, completely endless green canopy of the mighty Amazon rainforest. A sweaty Tom violently hacks through thick jungle vines, desperately trying to perfectly clear a safe path. Exhausted, he hilariously collapses on his super uncomfortable bamboo bed, totally needing a very long nap now. The breathtaking aerial view smoothly glides over the incredibly massive, completely untouched green Amazon jungle canopy. Standing totally shirtless in the flooded forest, Tom carefully explains why swimming here is incredibly dangerous. Instead of swimming, he quickly splashes fresh water on himself, desperately trying to stay somewhat clean today. Back at his sad camp, Tom nervously checks his totally crumbling roof, desperately hoping it magically holds. Holding his gross water filter, he stubbornly announces he's going to wildly search for fresh water vines. Eager for a fresh drink, Tom excitedly spots a huge, very promising liana vine right in the wild. He furiously hacks into the thick vine, totally ready to finally get some safe, delicious hydration. Oh yeah! Tom happily drinks the fresh water dripping straight from the massive Amazon vine. Carrying a huge chunk of the precious water vine, our fully hydrated hero proudly walks back to camp. Dark Jungle looks super spooky again, perfectly waiting for another crazy, very heavy Amazon downpour. Just as expected, the incredibly heavy rain starts violently pouring down on his tiny green canoe. Completely drenched, Tom hilariously stares at the camera, looking absolutely exhausted by this terrible jungle weather. Still dripping wet, he seriously explains that he completely canceled fishing because of the terrifying wild lightning. Hiding in his sad shelter, he hilariously complains about cold rainwater magically finding his underpants. The incredibly heavy rain keeps violently pounding the flooded jungle, turning it into a massive muddy lake. Realizing his terrible mistake, Tom furiously searches his badly leaking roof for any huge glaring holes. He desperately starts perfectly preparing a long palm stem to expertly fix his completely crumbling roof. Finally, our wet buddy happily jams the new leaves in, totally hoping to finally stay somewhat dry. The beautiful drone incredibly captures the stunning massive river winding peacefully through the endless green forest. Hoping to finally catch a huge fish, Tom eagerly throws his line right into the beautiful river. Still completely empty-handed, our stubborn fisherman paddles his canoe deep into the very spooky flooded woods. With serious focus, Tom aggressively throws his line right near a huge, promising tree trunk. The stunning aerial view perfectly shows the incredibly vast, totally peaceful Amazon River from high above. Now it's dark, and Tom violently chops branches, frantically trying to perfectly build a cool cooking grill. He's incredibly excited to finally cook his two tiny fish over the bright, super warm campfire. With a massive smile, Tom carefully sets the sticks over the fire, totally ready for dinner. Tom carefully places his two tiny fish on a big green leaf right over the cozy crackling campfire. Our survival chef patiently tends to his jungle barbecue, eagerly waiting for his hard-earned dinner to cook. Exhausted but totally victorious, he excitedly boasts about catching a second bigger fish to end the hungry night. Tom enthusiastically prepares for an absolute feast, surviving another wild night in this crazy flooded Amazon jungle. Unable to wait any longer, our guy eagerly takes a massive, satisfying bite of his weirdly crunchy roasted piranha. Bragging about his brilliant survival skills, the hungry explorer hilariously devours the delicious, crispy wilderness meal with joy. Moving right on to the second course, he happily prepares to munch on his deliciously smoky river catch. The sneaky carving trick completely fails, leaving poor Tom battling a mouthful of extremely annoying little fish bones. After that epic bone-filled dinner, the view shifts to the pitch-black, incredibly creepy flooded Amazon forest outside. Our guy finally chills out by his dying fire, desperately needing to relax his extremely stuffed belly. Armed with just a tiny light, our brave explorer nervously steps back onto his slightly terrifying green canoe. Paddling blindly right into the abyss, he frantically navigates through the spooky branches in the pitch-black water. The creepy night swamp feels entirely haunted as his tiny flashlight barely illuminates the twisted, flooded ancient trees. Drifting alone late in the eerie darkness, Tom desperately searches the murky water for hidden Amazonian monsters. Safely back under his makeshift leaf roof, the utterly exhausted adventurer heavily dreads cleaning up his messy camp. He happily reflects on surviving 5 insane solo days far, far outside his comfortable little city comfort zone. Collapsing onto his uncomfortable wooden bed, Tom desperately wishes someone would magically bring a nice back massage voucher. Waking up incredibly stiff on the very last day, he sits miserably while annoying heavy rain threatens everything. His lonely little green canoe patiently waits nearby in the deeply flooded, incredibly wet morning jungle water. Looking totally defeated and super sleepy, our tired survivor anxiously waits for his very delayed extraction motorboat. At long last, his awesome local guide smoothly paddles right up to rescue our guy from the wilderness. Tom quickly grabs his remaining muddy gear, happily saying a very final goodbye to his soggy jungle shelter. Cruising safely down the massive river, he happily looks back on his completely wild, unforgettable Amazon survival adventure. Flashing back to the crazy dark night, the guide carefully holds a tiny, extremely furious baby caiman crocodile. Gently releasing the little biting monster, Tom successfully wraps up his incredible, totally mud-filled Amazon survival journey.